Hiya, I'm Tracy, and thanks for reading my article on if formulas. This is just a quick practical demo on how to use those if formulas, so you can see it in real life, just to make it a little bit easier. So here I have some data. We have the scores from a test. We have the attendance rates for each of these individuals. And these yellow columns, I am going to complete with formulas to work out whether each person's passed or failed, which category they fall into, and what their performance rating was. So I'm going to start with a pass or fail, which is going to be a straightforward if. I'm going to show you using the wizard. So in the formulas ribbon up at the top, we go to insert function and we type in here, we type in if and click go. And then it will search for us all of the different if formulas, that anything that vaguely resembles the word if. So the top one is if. It tells us at the bottom, this is going to check whether a condition is met and return one value if it's true and another value if it's false. Brilliant. So I can click OK. So that's the one that I need. So then you can see it started putting the difficult parts of the formula in. It's put the word if in the brackets. All I now need to do is fill in these three little boxes, and it gives me some nice clues. So it wants a logical test in here, and it describes that as being any value or expression that can be evaluated to true or false. So ultimately, this wants to know what is the thing to check for. So my pass or fail criteria is going to be based on the score. So if the score is greater than 70, then it's a pass, but if not, it's a fail. So my logical test here is going to be if that cell, which is A3, I could have typed A3 in that cell, but I would have done a typo. So my logical test is A3 greater than or equal to, in case it's exactly on, 70, okay? So that's the logical test. It tells me the answer to that is true because that result is 88, so that is greater than 70. In this box, it wants us to tell it what to return if the result of this is true. So if it's true, I want it to say pass. With the wizard, any text will be wrapped in speech marks automatically. So when I click into this box, the false box, you'll see pass has now just been wrapped in speech marks. So the wizard takes care of all those things for you, so you don't need to worry about it if you're using the wizard. If you were typing this formula in manually, you'd have to remember to put those speech marks around any text or characters, okay? That's why I often recommend using the wizard if you are new to these formulas, because it saves you having to worry about those things. Okay, so this false box, it wants to know what to return if the result of the logical test is false. So here I want it to say fail. And again, we don't need to put speech marks in because the wizard will do that. I'll just click OK, and you'll see the result there is pass. Now, all I can do is, if I click onto the autofill here, so the little blob that appears in the bottom right corner, I often refer to it as the blobby. If you hover over that blob, so you get the little black cursor, you can hold down the left mouse and then drag that all the way to the bottom, and that will copy those formulas in the whole column. So obviously this first one is looking at cell A3. When I've copied it down a row, it's automatically updated the A3 to become A4, okay, and all the way down to the bottom, so this one's become A12. Okay, so that is our pass and fail. So we can see this person's failed and they got 40, which is less than 70. This person's passed and they got 75, obviously greater than 70. So your if formula is very straightforward. It literally has one criteria and then two possible outcomes. So it either is or it isn't matching that criteria. So this is what to return if it's true. This is what to return if it's false. So it's dead easy to follow. Now, in the category, we are going to have a few more criteria. So in here, we want to check what the score was. So we want to say that if it was greater than 90, like this one, we want that to say that one's excellent. If it was greater than 80, like this one, we'd want to say that that's in the category of good. If it was greater than 70, like this one, we'd say that was kind of average. And obviously, if it's less than 70, it's obviously a fail. So we'll just return fail in that category column. So we've essentially there got four potential options that we want to return. Okay, so it's not as straightforward as using an if formula. But what we can do is we can start our formula with the if. So if we start with just a straightforward if, let's start with the highest number. So we want to say if that cell is greater or equal to 90, then we put the comma, and the comma separates the argument. So now we want to tell the formula what to return if it's true. So if that is true, we want it to return excellent. And here we have to type in ourselves speech marks. Okay, it says excellent. So that's our first criteria on what to do if it's true. Then we put a comma. In the normal if, we'd then say what's to return if it wasn't greater than 90. But in this instance, if it's not greater than 90, we want to check the next criteria. So we're literally going to start typing in another if formula, because this is what to do if we get false on the 90. So we'll then say if this value is greater or equal to 80, and we'll do a comma, and then we'll say return good. That's right, isn't it? Yeah, excellent, and then good. Let me just see if I can move me out of the way. There we go. So if A3 is greater or equal to 80, we want it to return good. If it's false, if it's not, we want it to ask another question. So we'll say if A3 is greater than or equal to 70, then we want it to return average. And we'll take that B out of average. Okay, and that is now all of our criteria. If it doesn't match any of those criteria, then we want it to return failed, because if it's not greater than 90 or 80 or 70, then it must be less than 70. And if it's less than 70, it's a fail. So we don't need to ask another if question. We literally just have to say, if none of the above, we want to return a fail. Okay, oops. And then we need to do close brackets. I think we need a few of them. Yep, so you need to put the close brackets in until it goes black at the end, because they are color coded, they offset each other. Okay, so if I press enter and just see this has worked, yep, so that one's giving me a good because it's greater than 80. If I double click that all the way down, we can see that that one has been a fail, so it's less than 70, so it's the same as this cell. This one is an average because it's in the 70s. This one in the 90s is excellent. These are both fails. That one's good because it's in the 80s, and that one's another excellent, it's in the 90s. So this formula here is starting to get bigger, but it literally checks multiple criteria. So it checks, first of all, it's greater than 90. And the most difficult thing with an nested if like this is you've got to ask the questions in the right numeric order so that they make sense logically. Okay. The final formula I'm going to put in here is to check the performance. Now, the performance is going to be based on both the score and the attendance rate. Okay, so here we're going to use and with the if formula. So I'm going to start with an if, normal if. So the performance, what we want to check is if the score is, what did I say? It was greater than 80 and the attendance is greater than 90 as well. Oh, sugar. Let me start that again. So if the score is greater than 80 and the attendance is greater than 90, then we want it to return high performance or high performer. But if it's not, it doesn't match those two criteria, we want to just say regular performer. Okay, so our formula here is going to be if, but instead of going into what the criteria are, we're going to type in the word and then another open bracket. Okay, so what we're saying here is that before we do the if, we need to tell it what the two conditions are, what the two criteria are. So the two criteria, the first one is if this value is greater than or equal to 80, and then we put a comma to separate the arguments, and then we can give it the second criteria. And the second criteria will be this cell, if that is greater than or equal to, now it's 90%, which as a decimal is 0.9. So I can just type in 0.9, don't need to do the naught. Okay. So once I've got my two criteria, by the way, you could have multiple criteria in here, you're unlimited. I would literally do a close bracket. So you'll see that that close bracket has gone red, that matches this one. So now everything in this part of the formula, all of that is our and formula. Okay. The result of all of that, it's popped up there to say that it's true. So that is the answer. That's like our criteria, our whole criteria for the if. Okay. We then literally just need to say what to return if it's true. So if that is true, we want it to return high performer. High performer. Spelling's great. High performer. If it's not true, we want it to return regular performer. So again, speech marks, don't forget those, they'll always trip you up. And then we can close the brackets. Okay, so if I just press enter on that, there's a result high performer because that is greater than 80 and that is greater than 90. If I drag it all the way down, you can see that this one's a regular because that's not greater than 80 and that's not greater than 90 either. In this instance, this one's greater than 90, but the score is not greater than 80, so that's always going to be regular. So only when this was greater than 80 and this is greater than 90 do we ever get high performer. Okay, now just to give you a bit more insight into the and, the way this formula works is with an and, anything, all of these criteria, if there's two in this instance, if there were 3, if there were 4, if there were 18, every single one of them with an and formula would have to return true. Okay, so I'm just going to show you, if I highlight this part, the first logical arguments, you'll see it pops up and tells me that that one's true. If I highlight this one, all of it, that will pop up and tell you that that one's true as well. So therefore, if that's true and that's true, then the overall result of the AND, if I highlight all of them, the overall result of that is true. Okay, and that's what we need. In this instance, if I just look at this one, if I highlight A4 greater than or equal to 80, that's false. Okay, and this one is also false. If either of these within an AND formula give me a false, the overall result of the AND is always going to be false. Okay, so that is a quick demo of the if formula, the nested if formula, and the if with the AND. I hope that's been useful.